Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Dennis. My name is Rachele DeCrescenzo. I'm a physical therapist, and I've been practicing for about almost 18 years. And I've worked with adolescents through much older adults in my career. I started out working with doing outpatient orthopedics and working with, like I said, kids and adults and older adults in the full spectrum of different injuries. And then I went on to work specifically with strictly older adults in their homes. And so really kind of the older adult. I would say the second half of my practice when I was doing that job, the average age of our clients is probably 75 years old plus. So a lot of older adults. And our goal always there was to keep them functional and moving in their home and safe. And in 2019, I opened my own practice. And right now, what I do is I specialize in a type of treatment called John Barnes Myofascial Release. So it's a holistic type of treatment, a hands-on treatment that looks at and works with the fascial system of our body. So I'm going to talk about later when we get to that part of the talk is just how working and engaging with the fascial system, we can prevent injuries in both children and older adults.
Rachele, do you want to talk a little bit about why you're so passionate about this topic and what you've been able to do for the elderly?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about both children and adults, and just in general, how engaging with the fascial system can help to prevent injury. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the fascial system, but before I do, why I kind of want to talk about both spectrums. I looked up a couple of stats. So in the US, there's 30 million children and teens that participate in organized sports. And 3.5 million of those children have injuries every year. And most of those injuries are sprains and strains, which can really be prevented a lot of times. And with the elderly, a fact from back in 2019, so not that long ago, there was 3 million ER visits in adults that were 65 and older for falls. And of those 3 million ER visits, 34,000 deaths. Falls is the number one cause of injury deaths for adults 65 plus. So, injuries, keeping yourself healthy and your fascial system moving well is really important. So knowing those facts and that it's important to prevent injury, just to kind of back up a little bit. So in our bodies, we have a system called the fascial system. It's a three-dimensional connective tissue web that runs continuous from head to toe, front to back, side to side. And it's a system that basically holds us all together, holds all of our other systems together, our muscular system, our nervous system, our circulatory system. It's like the architecture of our body. If we think of it like this little ball here, the system should glide and move freely and smoothly as we move. But often what happens is we'll get restrictions in that web, in a structure. And if we get a restriction, then that web doesn't quite move the way it needs to. And it restricts the things around it that need to do what they do. So if it should move freely and allow our muscles to be able to perform certain activities, let's say, then we're in good shape. But when we get restrictions from different things, and restrictions can be from falls, from all different types of injuries, from different traumas. And the trauma doesn't have to be a physical trauma; it can be an emotional trauma as well. So undue stress is just one example, or an actual big life event like the stress or the trauma of a divorce or the trauma of a loss of a loved one. Those things kind of get stuck in our bodies and cause tightness and restrictions in our fascia. And those restrictions then can and often do wind up becoming physical symptoms and physical limitations. So that older adult that falls in older adults is multifactorial. There's so many things that can contribute to falls in older adults. Poor vision, polypharmacy, such as being on way too many medications, low low light in their home, safety issues. There's so many things that can cause falls with older adults. But you can imagine if they have those things, like they don't have good vision, their balance is poor, their home isn't as safe as they need to be. And now on top of it, their bodies are tight and non-pliable. When they go to trip, if they trip or they stumble on something, they have no recourse to catch themselves. So the fall actually happens instead of being able to catch themselves and not fall. So being able to have that fascial system that's open and free and lets your body move is really important. And the same thing with kids, especially now, kids younger and younger are being, are doing sports like very specific, year round, the same sport. And those overuse injuries can cause, overusing the same body part over and over again can really cause injury to the child. So keeping them mobile and balanced is super important. So when I work with my clients, whether they're children, adolescents, or older adults, we're looking at the whole system, the whole body. How is it moving? How is it functioning? And making sure that their body can move and do the things that it needs to do to prevent injury. And through working hands-on in the office, and then a very specific individualized home program where they work on these same types of things at home to open up their fascial system and keep them as movable and pliable and flexible as possible is really, really important to what I do with my patients.
And then Rachele, do you want to follow up as far as comments on others or elaborate on what you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I just want to say basically kind of what Jen just said, how it really is all, coming together with all of us. So we all have a piece of this, especially, I spoke before about just, talking about injuries with children and older adults, but I did briefly mention that, a lot of times I work with clients and patients that do have a lot of trauma in their lives, and that the trauma lives in their body and has caused physical symptoms. And what's really beautiful about John Barnes Myofascial Release, which is really different than any other modality I've ever learned or know of as a therapist, is, Jen said sometimes it's not always, you can't always get the traumas out verbally. And she mentioned some of the other things that they use at the center. And what Myofascial Release does is it gets people to tune into their bodies. So when you experience trauma, a lot of times you basically dissociate from your body because you need to survive the situation. And when you dissociate from your body, you don't even know how to feel into your own body. You don't know what it means to live in your body. So one of the things I do with my patients is just to get them to start to feel their bodies, know what it is to be in their body and to feel safe again in their body. So there's so much more to myofascial release than just the injury stuff that I spoke about like before, which is what I was kind of focused on today. But then the trauma piece came up, and that's such an important part of what I do too. And it's, in order to, and again, it ties into what Tracy said too, because in order for your, Tracy works on the biology and the food part of your system. But, in order for the food and the nutrients to get where they need to go in your body, your fascial system also needs to be open. Your body needs to be open. You need to release that trauma, those restrictions in your body. So it does all work together. And, there's a wonderful book called The Body Keeps the Score. I know Tracy knows it. I'm sure Jen knows it. And it's written by a psychologist that speaks about how the body remembers everything. And it does, and we have to find ways to release it, whether it is through myofascial release work, through horticulture work, through art, through music, through therapy, whatever, like we were talking about before. But so I just, what I do ties into so much of what Jen was talking about, and also what Tracy was talking about as well, and goes way beyond just the injury piece of the stuff I spoke about earlier.
And then finally, Rachele, 2 minutes or less. What is one thing you want to take a wrap up? And then we have plenty of time for questions if anyone in the audience has any questions they want to ask. So go ahead, Rachele.
Yeah, I just want to say, to consider, I guess the one thing I want to say is just consider the fascial system, or try to remember that there's this thing in our body called the fascial system, and it affects every other system, and it can really have an effect on a lot. And again, it's not something that's studied very often, or it's being studied a lot more over the last 10 years or so. But in general, there's not a lot of studies on the fascial system, and it doesn't show up on X-rays or MRIs or CAT scans either. So that's why sometimes it's ignored by Western medicine. But I think what I want to say is just know that there's this other system in our body that can potentially have a key to what's going on that might be missed in other Western medicines, because it really allows for a much more holistic look at the whole body, not just holistic meaning the whole body, but holistic in mind, body, spirit. We really dive a lot deeper into the symptom that you're feeling. It's never just a symptom alone. That symptom is just the tip of the iceberg. So just to consider that, and to consider that there might be some other solutions out there.